Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm so glad that you all could join us today. I know everybody's got busy afternoons now that classes are back in session, and we're so glad that you all could join in here today. We have a panel of speakers talking about mechanical engineering careers at Medtronic. Medtronic has joined in a partnership with SHPE for an internship program. That's a lot of ships in there. And this will be our second cohort in the summer of 2023. So we're very excited to have the application process open. And what we want to do today is just give you the opportunity to hear from employees and former interns at Medtronic about the work that they're doing in mechanical engineering and give you all the opportunity to ask questions of them. So be thinking about your questions. We will provide some time at the end where you can raise your hand and unmute yourself or type it in the chat, whatever you feel comfortable doing. We want to make sure that you all have time to get your questions answered. I will share the recording and the slides for you after the presentation today, so you have them to refer back to. Just so you know, those links on their names take you to their LinkedIn profiles. So if you have questions, you can reach out to them and ask them more questions. But I just wanted to take a moment for each panelist, and we'll kind of go in order how your pictures here are on the screen, to take a moment to introduce yourself. So if you'll please just share your name, what was your undergraduate major, graduate major, anything that you did in your education, and your current title, and just a little bit of your professional path to illustrate how you got in your current role. So we'll start with Rachel.
All right. Hello, everyone. And Susan, if I forget something in there, let me know. I'll try to remember everything.
That's a lot of information.
Yes. So my name is Rachel Day. I do have a bachelor's and master's in mechanical engineering from what used to be the University of Missouri-Rolla. That is now the Missouri University of Science and Technology, if anyone has heard of it. It's in a small town in Missouri, but I'm here to represent. And so I'm a mechanical engineer. I would say my career has probably taken a lot of twists and turns in the sense that I learned a lot about things I did not like to do. And then I went the other direction. So I've worked for General Motors, working on Saturn cars. I know they're extinct now, basically, but I did work on them. And for a company called Lexmark, they make laser printers. I worked for Rubbermaid commercial products. So I actually engineered mops for a while. It happened, amongst other things. And then I actually went from engineering mops to engineering medical devices for Medtronic. And I was in a group in Arizona, actually, when I did this panel last year for manufacturing. And now I work in our surgical robotics group in Connecticut. So I just made a change, and I am a senior program manager, as the slide says now, but essentially I'm our champion for we'll call it a Design for X program. So you might have heard of Six Sigma or something like that. And so that is what I do now. So hopefully I covered everything, Susan.
You got it. That was
Awesome.
great. And Rachel and I haven't met before, so I don't know if you're from Missouri, but I live in Kansas City, Missouri, so not too far.
Oh, excellent, excellent.
Not too far. Santiago, how about you next?
Hello, everyone. My name is Santiago Cal. I'm a senior engineering manager for product innovation and operation here in diabetes operation units in Northridge, California. I've been in Medtronic for 13 plus years, and I started out as a mechanical engineer too, and then evolved into a senior engineer, a principal engineer before pursuing the path of engineering management. Prior to Medtronic, I did work in oil gas industry and also in private education for 5 years. But biomedical engineering and medical technology is what I went to school for. I actually received a bachelor's degree in BME from the University of Southern California. So fight on, those of you who might be a Trojan. Here in Medtronic, I was able to develop the Medtronic insulin delivery systems and also next-gen continuous glucose monitors through comprehensive product development experiences from phase 0, which is ideation, through phase 6, which is sustaining. In addition, I was involved in due diligence integration exercises for some of the newer acquisitions. For ID&E, I served as the building's site philanthropy lead, and also currently I'm serving as the site diversity network and ERG lead, working with groups like Hispanic Latino Network and SHPE to ensure that you can bring your authentic self to Medtronic every day. And maybe a fun fact, I lived in Taiwan and in Paraguay, South America for over 10 years each. So I'm definitely a mix of culture, as my name might indicate. Nice meeting you guys.
Thanks so much. Inigo?
Hi all, Inigo Alonso here. I'm a mechanical engineer too, both undergrad and grad. I have a master's in engineering management too. I joined Medtronic around 3 years ago with previous experience in the aerospace sector, both in manufacturing and R&D. And right now for Medtronic, what I do is support the defibrillator, pacemaker, and neurostimulation businesses. In particular, being a senior manufacturing engineer, I oversee the cost savings program that we have to make our battery manufacturing more efficient.
Great, thanks for joining us today. Alfredo, how about you?
Yeah, so Alfredo Aguirre, I also went to school for mechanical engineering in South Texas. So the name of the school is University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. I also recently got my MBA from the same university. And currently I'm a supplier quality engineering manager. I work remote from South Texas, so I'm close to family. I see 956, yes. I'm in here in Edinburgh, Texas, so definitely the Valley area. So I started my career as a manufacturing engineer within Medtronic. Then I became a manufacturing supervisor. Then I moved to the CM and OEM space. So CM is contract manufacturing and original equipment manufacturing. So basically, we contract companies to either, if we own the design, to manufacture our own design, or else if they own the design, we get in partnerships so that they can distribute for us. In there, again, like I have a team of 7 engineers, and they have a scope throughout the world. So suppliers here within the US, but also Malaysia and Taiwan, China, so everywhere around the world. And I think it's a really fun experience because as a mechanical engineer, you're able to apply the concepts on a daily basis, as far as qualification activities, as far as being familiar with manufacturing, and also the physical presence when you go and visit different sites.
Wonderful, thank you. And then we also have Jason with us, who is an intern from the cohort this past summer. So Jason, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Jason. I'm originally from New York City, and I moved to Boston to go to school at MIT. I studied mechanical engineering, and I actually attended a similar panel to this last year, which is how I found out about the internship. And so this previous summer, I was a part of this internship, and I worked in Minneapolis as a manufacturing engineering intern. And yeah, I recently received a full-time return offer for the same department as a manufacturing engineer 1. So I'm super excited about that.
Congratulations. A lot of hard
Thank
work
you.
there. So we're gonna go back to the beginning and come back to Rachel again and kind of go through each of you. I'd love for you guys to just kind of tell us, since we can't job shadow you for the day, we can't come to your site and see what you do. Can you just share with us like what a typical day looks like maybe pick last Wednesday or last Thursday, and how much of your time was in meetings or doing hands-on components, just kind of walk us through your typical day.
All right, so I guess you're starting with me again. So the typical day for me, in my previous job was very hands-on. This job now as a program manager instead of a design engineer is a lot less hands-on because I'm trying to learn, as I'm sure Santiago's probably gone through this transition too, of trying to help other people do that work as opposed to doing it yourself. So a lot of my meetings now are more coaching and trying to influence others and making sure that we're putting good technical rigor into our projects and our processes and procedures, and that it actually all makes sense because, you know, we don't want to go overboard with the bureaucracy. Nobody likes that. And so that's a lot of what I do now.
Yeah, Rachel, I definitely can relate to that. And the way that I'll say is that I love it that there is not a typical day here for my job here in Medtronic, but I'll generalize by saying that how I spend my time is a third coaching, mentoring, and directing the team of 12 that I have currently in my organization. And then the other third of my time is spent collaborating with peer managers in mechanical engineering, as well as cross-functional leaders in electrical system and even in other departments such as quality, regulatory, PMO, to basically work towards the strategy of programs and projects, and even something like FDA responses. And the last third of my time is working with superiors like my boss and the directors and VPs on just sort of like report outs and project updates, or with corporate leaders on the IDME space. So that a third just managing my own team, a third managing and collaborating with peers, across functional groups, and then the last third managing up is how I typically spend my time and typical part of the day. Now, the activity might be just sort of like a one-day workshop of sorts to just sprint 15-minute stand-up meetings or desk reviews, right? So the experience really changes or are really different. But the overall delineation of tasks seems to be consistent in that regard.
I can add a different perspective to what Rachel and Santiago have shared. Being in manufacturing, I get more of a hands-on job. It is true that as we have hire more younger engineers in the team, I have diverted towards more of a strategic approach, but I still look at materials on a daily basis. I interact with operators. There's a ton of data analysis that needs to be done on a daily basis, process data of how the processes are performing, and try to draw the right conclusions from that data so you make the changes that the process needs to be at optimal performance. So this hands-on type of job could either be inspecting parts for defects, comparing that to the print, evaluating the tooling performance, and I don't know, doing some stack up analysis, gathering some data. There's the job as an engineer could be really hands-on, and there's also opportunities to do the role like Rachel and Santiago are doing now.
Great. Alfredo, how about your day? What does it look like for you?
My day. So I would say 20-30% one-on-ones. So coaching, helping, with either root cause analysis or problem solving, continuous improvement. And then 30% I use it for strategy deployment and also the strategy creation. And I would say probably the rest of the day is providing some type of service communication, help removing roadblocks to the people and the cross functions that I work with. then as well throughout the day, I have also some technical changes or processes that I'm working with. So, but in a daily basis, I'm doing a lot of root cause analysis and again, problem solving.
Great. Jason, what was it like for you as an intern this last summer? What did your days look like?
Yeah, so like I said, I was in manufacturing operations. I worked on 3 different projects. 2 of them were basically when we were bringing in new equipment onto the site, just validating that equipment. And then another project was a process improvement project. I'd say every day was different, but an ideal day for me was 50% of my time in meetings. And the reason I say that's ideal is because as an intern, I think one of my goals was to just kind of be a sponge and like learn as much as I can from other people. And so I tried to make sure that 50% of my day was either in meetings working on my personal projects or just networking with like people that work at the company, networking with other interns, visiting new sites, and just meeting as many people as I can. And then I'd say 30% of that time, 30% of my other time would be on the floor or doing measurements or collecting data. And then 20% of my time would be kind of writing up reports and kind of writing up all my findings.
And I agree with Santiago. I love all the different vantage points that you guys are bringing to it. But one theme I'm really hearing from you all too is just the networking and talking with people and how important that process is. So let's move into more of just kind of an organic conversation here, and whichever panelist wants to pick up this next question and run with it, feel free. But let's take you back a little bit to like how you chose this. How did you choose your career? How did you choose your major? Which panelist wants to pick that up?
The major or the career?
Well, let's start with your major. How about we start with
Okay.
how'd you choose your major?
Yeah, so initially I wanted to be a civil engineer, but then so then I chose that major. But then I think I was in South Texas, outside in the heat, and then I was like, it's 100 degrees outside. Like I don't want to be outside, you know, like and doing troubleshooting and construction. Like I'm just gonna, you know, like be really exhausted on being on 100-degree weather. And I was like, I need to find something else. And then I started looking into mechanical engineering, industrial engineering, and just the physical aspect of mechanical engineering is what actually excited me. I don't really like electricity or electrical engineering, so because you're not able to see it, you're not able to touch it, and then if you touch it, then it's dangerous. So I was like, I think mechanical is for me. And yes, like it showed me, you know, the different components, how to analyze different systems, and it just like now that I look at my role on the day-to-day and as a manufacturing engineer, it just helped my mind be more strategic about how to evaluate different problems and how to, you know, just when you get like a problem in an exam is no different from what you get on a daily basis. You have to evaluate what are your inputs, what do you know, what information you need to know, and then start asking the right questions and start solving the problem one piece at a time, and then until you're able to get to a point where you have a solution or a conclusion.
I can understand that. I lived in South Texas for a summer, and that was some of the warmest I've ever been. So how about some of the others of you? Like, let's hone in on your career. That was a great kind of reflection about how you chose a major. What about some of the rest of you? How did you choose your career?
Well, I'll take that one to start with, because like I said earlier, I learned a lot of things I didn't like to do. So I loved mechanical engineering, but it's very broad, as you've probably heard so far or experienced yourself, right? There's a lot of things you can do with it. And so I had a summer internship when I was in college with General Motors. And I thought the automotive industry would be so great because I want to see that car going down the road and tell all my friends and family I designed it. right? Like I want bragging rights. And so I worked in the automotive industry one summer and hated it. I hated it. It was not for me. And I was like, oh no, what do I do with my life now? And so I signed up for a design class that coming semester in college, and absolutely fell in love with that early part of the design process where you're sketching on blank pieces of paper and stuff. And I was like, where have these classes been all my life? Why did I not take one of these sooner? And so I kind of went that direction. And then, of course, I bounced around to different companies, like I mentioned earlier, for various reasons, and then ended up at Medtronic, actually because I was looking at job postings on Indeed. And I said, hey, mom, because my mom's a nurse. And I was like, have you ever heard of this medical device company called Medtronic? And she didn't even ask what the description was, job title, nothing. She's like, just apply. They're great. And so I actually applied. So that's how I ended up at Medtronic. But it was a lot of discovery, I think, along the way of narrowing down what I really enjoyed doing.
What great advice from your mom.
Yes, it worked out well. Thanks, Mom.
I'm going to throw another question out there, kind of related. Curious what Santiago or maybe Anico thinks of this, but like, what was your first win that made you like realize I'm doing the right thing? Like this fits me. What was your first win kind of piece in your career path?
I can share, yeah, about 3 months into my now 13-year tenure, I think I wrote a ER and shared it with the senior director of engineering. He's known to be a tough person when it comes to reviews, but after reading my report, he's like, you did a tremendous job and you should think about retiring here. And get this, right? It's only 3 months into my Medtronic tenure. And at that point, I was very frank to him. I'm just trying to survive here. So let me think about that retirement piece. But I think that was the start of a very fulfilling career here in Medtronic. And I can honestly say that I feel like, okay, I do have 20, 25 years left in me, and Medtronic could be the place.
That's awesome. No pressure in your first meeting, right? Talk about retirement. Nico, how about you?
Yeah, so there were a couple of moments that were wins that showed me I was doing the right thing. Coming from a different country, for me was college. The first moment, education in some other countries is different to in America, and they fail courses very easily. So as soon as I had the first test and only 13 of us out of 500 passed the exam, that's when I realized, okay, maybe I'm doing something right. And then professionally, when I came here and 4 months into my journey, I got the opportunity to present in front of the VP project that was going to bring us $2 million of savings. And I think that was the second moment where, I was not expecting to be presenting in front of somebody important in 4 months into my Medtronic career.
That's awesome. Jason, how about you? Kind of thinking back as you're kind of reflecting on your undergrad experiences, what were some of the early things you did in your undergrad career that helped lead you to mechanical engineering, to kind of this field?
Yeah, so I guess when I first got into college, I knew that I wanted to work on medical devices just because I had a back injury myself, and I wanted to kind of work on devices for the spine or like back support or anything of those sorts. Within a couple months into college, my back injury got better, and so I kind of lost that. But I did have a conversation with my advisor, and I was like, hey, like I do want to work on kind of physical things. I want to be hands-on, and I do want to do, I think, medical devices. But my college didn't have like a robust medical device program or biomedical engineering program. And so he basically just said, study mechanical engineering. It's a great foundation. And then if you want to specialize later down the road, whether that's with further education or in your career, you can always specialize. I think a big win that I had was in a design class where I got to work with actual users, and I got to build a prosthetic tool that helped hook users basically navigate their kitchen better and cook basically cook anything they wanted much easier through our device. And so I got to work with users. I got to see, like, go visit their homes, kind of cook with them. And I saw like the real impact that this project was making on someone. And I knew that after that, after that design class, that this was the field I wanted to be in, like a field where I can design things and make things that can allow people to live their best lives. And I think that's really what showed me that this is like the industry that I wanted to at least start my career in.
That's awesome. What a great experience as an undergrad student. Way to get involved there. Well, one question that has been really popular in the past on these panels, and I'll just open it up to any of the panelists, was what's the culture at Medtronic in terms of your expectations, standards? How did you experience that?
Maybe I can start. Culture, I love it here. You know, like we have a purpose, we have a driver, which is to improve patients' lives. So, and that is true on a daily basis, on every decision that we make, and that is understood across the organization. And it's not just me telling words, but really that every decision we need to take quality and the patient in mind as the first place. But then the support that we get as engineers, as managers, on career development, on you know, like diversity, I think Medtronic is doing a lot for employees. They really care about what we think, about the feedback we provide, and the organization as a whole is always trying to improve and to provide opportunities for us to give ideas and feedback. So in general, I think Medtronic's culture is really, really good. And I had the opportunity to also work in Cummins and other companies, but I think having like a driver and being the center of every decision, I think that's what makes Medtronic unique.
Yeah, I'll add to that. I think the culture varies within Medtronic too, between operating units, between sites. And so even if Jason was an intern, you know, in like Minneapolis, right? If that wasn't like quite the right fit, one of the great things I love about Medtronic is you can change sites, kind of like I did, you know, to find something that you might like better, or maybe you're just ready for a change. And one of the things I do love about Medtronic, like, doesn't matter what operating unit you're in or what site you're at, is it's full of really smart people. And I love working with really smart people who also like working with really smart people. So, you know, they don't care like what your name is, where you're from. They just like working with other smart people. And so I really enjoy that aspect of Medtronic, regardless of what site you're at.
I would add to that we do have what's called employee resource groups that try to foster diversity. There are many groups, you know, ranging from religions to ethnicities to LGBT groups, and I felt very welcome since day one, because the people from the Hispanic Latino network already knew me, and it was like coming in with a group of friends already. So that's really a welcoming environment.
Awesome. This was also a question that somebody asked on the last panel. So I know it's a question that people like, because they actually asked it before we got to it. So I know they wanted to hear about it. Can you tell us what's the most challenging and rewarding aspects of your career experience or your internship experience, Jason? What's the most challenging and the most rewarding aspects for you? Who would like to start?
I can I can try to take a crack. By the way, I feel like my fellow panelists have been great, and I'm even learning myself through their answers. So thank you very much. The most challenging and rewarding aspect about my particular job right now is that I work in the diabetes operation unit. So it is a disease state that, in terms of longevity and impact to the global population, it has been basically the pandemic that we have been fighting all along, right? Even before COVID. And in diabetes, we have the challenge of designing reliable medical devices, but at the same time, because of the direct-to-consumer nature of the disease state and therapy technologies, we also have to design very aesthetically pleasing and easy-to-use medical devices so that these devices can not only be used by us engineers, but also people of all walks of life. And that trade-off between just sort of reliability and robustness and ease to use and aesthetics has been the challenge. And coming from emerging market myself, right? So I am Chinese Latin by culture and heritage. I am also thinking about not just designing the Ferraris of the world for diabetes treatment, but also that e-bike moped that can eventually translate into emerging markets organically, not through just a pricing and selling older, generational devices at a cheaper price, but organically by addressing their needs. So that is the challenge, but also a reward that I not only get to serve patients, period, that can afford them, but also people closer to my hometowns.
I love that when the challenges turn into rewards, right? Like that's the ultimate. How about the rest of you? What is really challenging and really rewarding for you?
So recently there was a big reorganization, Medtronic wide, but then specifically supplier quality, global supplier quality got impacted by the change. It was a change in the way that we do business and also our mentality while doing the business. So what it meant is that there were new organizations created that work along with supplier quality. And what has been challenging is that there wasn't like 100% guidance on how to do the day-to-day job moving forward with the new organization. So therefore the challenge is that as a leader, I have been driving more of the conversations that we call RACI. So who's responsible, who's accountable, who's consulted, who's informed. But we have about 10 organizations that partner with us. So the rewarding piece about having those tough conversations is that I have been able to meet with multiple people, multiple roles, and just expand my network, understand about different perspectives, and then form my mind as a leader, and then understand how to bring Medtronic together.
That's great. I'm gonna throw another one out there, but I'm gonna tell the participants, be getting ready, be ready with your questions, because it's coming time for you to ask your questions too. But I'd love to throw this out to any panelist who wants to speak to this. What do you enjoy most about Medtronic? Like, what just makes you happy when you think about it? What do you love bragging to people about? This is what I get to do at Medtronic. What's the most the thing that you enjoy the most?
I do enjoy how complicated our devices are. Think about it, like we are talking about a piece of electronics that is put in a body, and this body is full of fluids. You have blood, you have pressure from all those fluids, and the device has to perform, and has to perform with extreme reliability. I remember working in the aerospace sector, and you can imagine how reliable that is. You are talking that if something fails in an airplane, the airplane goes down, right? And you don't want that. Well, I can tell you that the standards here are even higher than those in the aerospace sector. So that speaks for how complicated the engineering behind the devices is.
That's a really good point. And when you look at your products and you think about some of the things that you're ingesting and doing, and so that's great to hear that the standards are really high. What about Jason? I'm curious for you, when you got to go home and tell people about your internship experience, what was your favorite story to tell? Your favorite win?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I really like about manufacturing is that you know that every successful part that goes through the process, that you actually see on the manufacturing floor, every part that you see moving through the process that is able to be validated or verified, like that's going into a patient. And I feel like that's what I tell people all the time. It's like, it's so rewarding to know that kind of with every device you see move through the process, like you might be saving a life. And I think that was the most rewarding part for me.
Great. Okay. I do have a lot more questions I could ask, but I want to be cognizant of like time, and I want to give you all the chance. I mean, you've got somebody who went through the internship experience not just but a month ago, and you've got people who've been at Medtronic for a lot of years and some newer ones. Like, what questions do you have for them? You can type them in the chat, you can raise your hand, unmute your microphone. Who wants to be brave and ask the first question? Stefano.
Hello.
Yep, go ahead. What's your question?
So first of all, I would like to say thank you for everyone for coming out. I know you guys are super busy, so thank you very much. And I would actually want to talk to Santiago. You spoke recently about how, yes, it's very rewarding to work on the Ferraris of innovation and medical design. I can somewhat speak for myself as an undergraduate researcher going through that process of product development, but I really want to learn more about how to make a product that can be disseminated to a larger audience, because of course not anyone has the resources to pay for the complex designs that we have now. So what does Medtronic do to reach this audience?
That's a great question, and something that I'm also kind of figuring out myself. So I am by no means the economic or reimbursement expert in that area. But Medtronic does have intentional programs that are heavily leaning towards the philanthropy side through Medtronic Labs, for instance, in which I think we depend on things like smartphones that even just sort of like regions of lower economic mean might have, and use basically the smartphone's camera and Medtronic algorithm to basically detect ear diseases, for instance, and other solutions, right? And then more intentionally, because we don't want to be a global leader of medtech with that asterisk, and that asterisk is only for developed markets. There are more intentional and organic moves way at the beginning of product to basically design that segment from the get-go. I think that is happening also in terms of with diabetes, for instance. We have specific pumping mechanisms, or even just sort of like smart pens to address that segment. And I'm seeing more and more that is happening in other division as well. And yes, the Ferraris of the world and the shiny object, the latest and greatest bells and whistles definitely attract me as an engineer, but as a person who is from the developing world, emerging markets, I know for a fact that the latter, which is just to ensure that we think from that global mindset and also that empathy towards those patients, and come up with creative solutions that are delivering the not only on the clinical outcomes but economic value, is something that I literally will spend the rest of my career on. So our business structure, the region-led market, for instance, are giving us a lot of good insight, just sort of like, hey, if you can design your product and make sure that everything fit within this budget, you could have access to a certain amount of patients and things like that. So yeah, there are basically intentional works that are being ahead. We're by no means out there yet. It takes a lot for a Ferrari shop to design a moped e-bike, right? Let's just be very transparent. But at the same time, I'm seeing the move and the directionality of things.
That's a great question. Does anybody else have a question you'd like to ask a member of the panel? There's one in the chat I'll read to you all. For those of you who focus on the recruiting and the application portion, my screen just went. More questions. What stands out most to you when reviewing candidates and their applications? What should they focus on to better their resumes, applications? Brittany, I know you're kind of listening in. I don't know if you want to chime into that. And also, Jason, this might be a good chance for you to kind of chime in, like, what was your application experience like too? What do you feel like that you did really well on your application that helped you?
Yeah, so I would say I was hired through CHIP. So I went through the CHIP conference and you know, like I had interviews with Medtronic and actually I think they reached out to me prior to going to CHIP, but then during the CHIP, that's when I interviewed, and then later I had the opportunity to go on and screen people. Also, we were able to hire members. Inigo, actually, I screened Inigo, and then, you know, later we hired Inigo. So I think what stands out for me is passion, is just being involved in your school, whether it's volunteering, whether you're forming part of a CHIP. I think for Medtronic, grades are really important. The requirement is that you need at least 3.2 GPA. But overall, I'm looking for a well-rounded leader that is passionate about what they're doing, and they don't need to have all the experience or all the solutions or everything that they're looking for, but at least also I want to see that they have taken the time to understand what is Medtronic and what do we do, what are the different opportunities within the Medtronic, and that at least they have some good questions so that we can help them get to the right either the right career or the right internship for them.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that and hopefully kind of answer Kevin's question in the chat as well. I think what I look for when I get asked to sit in on, you know, interview panels and stuff is, besides all the things Alfredo just mentioned, right? But I'm also looking for is somebody willing and able to be taught. Because, right, you don't have all the experience, neither do I when I interviewed for this job I have now, right? But it's, you know, are you willing and able? Because if we can teach you, if you can tell your story, regardless of your major, Kevin, you know, then that's what we're looking for. Because then we can work with you. And because you're not going to know everything, especially coming straight out of college, right? Or coming maybe from another industry, and that's okay, right? We can kind of teach you the rest.
Yeah, oh, sorry, go ahead, Inigo.
No, I was just going to say that there's this thing that people mention about what makes a speaker good, and it is 70% the tone, the energy he or she speaks with, it is 20% the body language, and it is 10% the content. So actually you should focus on that energy you transmit to the person in the company. And when it comes to resumes, it's kind of similar. Like the appeal, the format of the resume makes a huge difference, and having those keywords there that the recruiter is looking for.
I was just going to add, like coming from the internship recruitment perspective, we really look for like extracurriculars, similar to what Neo just mentioned. How, like, leadership, how can you tie those experiences if you're in, you know, SHPE, if you're in other student groups, even volunteering, could be church, could be anything. How are you using those experiences to apply to this and like group work, working with others, things like that. So you may not have had an internship before, but definitely looking for kind of those extracurriculars and leadership opportunities to help kind of build out your experience. And you can use that to answer those interview questions. And sorry, Jason, I don't know if you wanted to add how your interview experience was for your internship.
Yeah, for sure. So for both the internship and then the full-time interviews, I guess one thing I did well is that I just like showed my curiosity. I think I'm just naturally a curious person, and during all of my interviews, I made sure to ask all the questions that I had, whether that's clarifying the role or just learning more about the interviewer. But just make sure that you show how curious you are, because yeah, if you're applying to something, you should be curious and the job and your daily responsibilities. And then I think another thing that helped me out is just making sure that you know your own kind of background really well. Everything that's on your resume. Your own experiences. Before going into that interview, you review everything that you have on your LinkedIn. You review everything you have on your resume, and you make sure that you have kind of stories kind of prepared with all of those experiences so that you can speak to them.
You guys are getting some great advice here. I could add to it, but I won't because it was just so good. But there was another question that was sent to me about engineering experience and whether or not, or is it encouraged to apply to an experience like this if they really haven't had any engineering experience yet in a position. And I think a lot of you are talking about, your initial experiences. So could any of you address that? Like, should somebody apply to an internship if they haven't had any engineering experience yet?
I'd say you have to start somewhere. We at some point, everyone on this panel did not have engineering experience. So just keep that in mind along with all of your interviewers. And so I would say apply. And you can show, some of that stuff in other ways. Like they were talking about those leadership examples, the extracurriculars, the curiosity. And so, yeah, I'd say don't let that stop you and just go ahead and apply. You never know what could happen, right?
Awesome. I will concur with that. I know that there were some interns from this last summer who this was really their very first experience. So don't let that intimidate you. Stefano, you had another question you want to ask?
Yeah, it's actually kind of on experience. So I recently started gaining a lot of working experience with 3D modeling and CAD designing, just the general tools of product development. And this one's going to go out for Rachel Day. I recall that you said you were a design engineer. Could you speak on maybe if my experience would transfer over anything, or what should I be doing to kind of prepare myself?
Absolutely. It sounds great. I know I had a little bit of CAD experience when I was an undergrad. So I actually learned on NX, which used to be known as Unigraphics. That's mostly used by kind of your, I don't know, like automotive, shipbuilding kind of industries, people making really big, complicated stuff. And so I was fortunate, my first job out of school, they also used NX. So that worked out really well for me. And then my job at Rubbermaid, they used Pro-E, also known as Creo. So then I had to like dabble in that a little bit. And then I came to Medtronic and I actually had to learn Creo and SolidWorks at the same time with no one around to help me. So I'm no joke, I resorted to YouTube videos, right? You do what you got to do. And so any experience is great. And one of the things is like when I look at resumes for MEs and looking at CAD packages and stuff like that, if you've learned one, you can probably learn the rest, because you at least understand the thinking and the mindset of how do I design this widget three-dimensionally on the computer kind of a thing. And from there, it's just a matter of where's the button? What's it called? Right. So I would say it's wonderful experience. And when you're interviewing too, I was going to say this earlier, but a lot of it too is in how you tell your story, right? So it's not necessarily I have this specific CAD experience, but like, hey, I can think this way. I already have the experience over here. I'm willing and able to learn. Like, I learned on Creo, you have SolidWorks, no big deal, guys. Like, I'm game. And so that's kind of how you sell it, right? Is that, oh, you have that? I would love to learn that, you know, because then it shows us that you know, you're kind of up for the task. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
I would add to that, having a past life in mechanical design, that something that I hear is very in demand. Even like I would say that 20% of the mechanical engineers really know how to do it well is finite element analysis. It is something that I heard a lot in demand, and whenever I'm trying to move internally in Medtronic to apply to new positions, they are always interested in that skill set.
Yeah, that's a great point. And actually, a lot of those CAD packages now have some like basic FEA kind of features in them. So that might be a good way, especially in college, to kind of start dabbling in the FEA stuff. And some schools might have a whole class on it too. So yeah, I would agree with Inigo. That is a skill people are definitely looking for often, but not required. So don't let that stop you from applying.
Exactly.
Love that plug. Yes. It's all about getting the experience now, right? Awesome. Well, we've got time for probably like one more question. If somebody has one that you want to ask, you want to type in, you want to unmute yourself. Who's got a question? Okay, well, Stefano's got his hand up again, so let's hear it.
I'm so sorry. I've been taking.
No, you don't have to apologize at all. This is exactly what this is for.
Okay. So this one's actually going to go out to Jason Ramirez. So I went to the original panel with just Brittany Prather and Susan, and we talked about how Medtronic, like as a SHPE organization, they put you together. I really want a sense of community when I go and I work for a company, because I feel like if I want to show up to work, of course, I'm going to produce better work. And I don't know, could you talk about the like atmosphere, you know, of how working there felt?
Yeah, for sure. I can talk about 3 different things. So first of all, so I worked in Minneapolis, as I said, and I was actually housed with 3 other roommates that were also Medtronic interns. So most of the interns in Minneapolis were in the same.
I think Jason's network is out, right?
Just a little bit.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, while hopefully he gets back in just a hot second, would anybody else like to talk about that for Stefano? Just the concept of coming to work and feeling like you connect with people.
Well, I do know, right, that the interns do have a lot of activities that they do together on the whole, and that those are planned for them. And there's lots of networking opportunities for them as well. There's ERGs, right, that somebody mentioned earlier, the employee resource groups. And even as an intern, you can participate in those. So we have a lot of ways for you to kind of find your people and find a group that you really enjoy hanging out with.
Absolutely. One of the things I'm doing actually like exit interviews with all of the 2022 interns right now, just to kind of hear about their experience. And one thing that we're learning that they always want more of and is networking. And so looking at trying to incorporate that even more. But they did have a lot of activities that they could pick and choose from that they got to participate in. And one of the things that will kind of help kick that off is they actually do a boot camp, and hopefully we'll be able to do that in person this year and bring everybody together so they can meet. So lots of opportunities to connect with that SHPE group, but also the intern groups at Medtronic as a whole as well. So, well, I just want to thank everybody for coming today. I wanted to just do a quick reminder for you all that you can go to ship.org/internship And there's a few things on there that you might want to do. Was kind of alluded to about the info session that we did. That was the general overall info session. If you haven't had a chance to watch that, that recording is there. We'll have the recordings from all the career panels there. You can see what the other career panels are scheduled for. And just a reminder that the application is due 8 a.m. Central Standard Time, because that's where my desk sits. That's where I'll download the applications on September 21st, and we'll get started on the review process. And any questions that you have, feel free to email internship@ship.org. That comes to me and other members of our team, and we'll make sure you get your questions answered. But I just want to thank all the panelists today, and I want to thank all the participants today for just taking the time to explore this opportunity more. Thanks so much, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good day.